Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining for this webinar today. And I think it's a very exciting day for us at ERA. It's more because this is something that started as a project for us almost 2 years ago in April 23, when Paul had this idea that we should have, a database for germination, for seed germination across India. And quite a few people got together. About 23 people, joined subsequent calls about seed germination and what this database could look like, what would be the fields that would be important, and then and all of those. A lot of people also uh, contributed towards making this database possible. We have in this database, you have over 1,000 plus entries for about 465 species at this point, and we hope to carry on growing this database as we go along. Um, so I think what I really want to point out is this is a very nice moment for us because this was started from a seed with the help of the community. It has become something fantastic that is available to everyone to use. And with this, I'd like to introduce to you all Paul. Paul works as the director for Audible Botanical Gardens. He is also a member of the ERA India Steering Committee, and he was the one who brought this idea forward. So now I will hand it over to Paul to talk about the seed germination database and the journey so far and what we hope to achieve with this. Thank you. Paul, over to you.
Okay, so welcome everybody to this exciting day, as June has told us. It's a great moment for the ERA, and it's very nice that we've been able to put this together and build this germination techniques, a database, and some other resources that will go with it eventually. I think, yeah, the idea of this webinar really is to, just to spend 20 minutes for me to chat, to introduce some ideas, to try and get people thinking about it. Then we'll have a live demonstration, hopefully, with June showing us through a little bit the features of the database itself. And then it's nice to try and open up as a discussion where we can look at a couple of different things. One is what is actually we've done, and the second one is where can we go forward with it, and what other ideas people have. So I think that's where we try to sort of make as much of a debate as possible. Whether it's easy on webinar or not, we'll try and see how the technology works. But for now, that was the idea that I sort of set out with this morning when I sort of thought about this webinar. So here we are. First, as we move forward, I think it's important to pay tribute to everybody who's been involved and who shared data with us in this process. I'm not going to read out the names, but the names are up there on the screen for everybody to see. Hopefully everybody who has contributed is mentioned there. If not, again, apologies from my side. And please do let me know, because we'll sort of continually update this set of information about who's been contributing. I think it's very important to make sure that everybody is acknowledged with their names and their organizations. So let me jump in with a few slides. So the slides are really there just to help me remember what I was thinking about or talking about when I set out this morning to create this presentation. And I thought, we could start with a few different titles and move through it. So I wanted to sort of start with the idea of context. The photos are there. They're not there really to convey much meaning. They're just there to give you something to look at, which is quite nice to look at. So don't try and read too much into it. But it was just to give some visual interpretation of where we were. But this idea that we have a context, that we are the Ecological Restoration Alliance, and that we are starting to build a collaborative effort. I mean, that was the idea that we set out with back in 2021 or 2022, when actually we started moving. And we were working towards what I consider to be a sort of an implicit vision that's there. Somehow it's there amongst us all, but sometimes we formulate it, sometimes we attempt to formulate it. But it's not always clear. It sort of comes and goes as we move forward. And actions like this really help us to see what we're trying to do. And it helps us to manifest in reality some of the thoughts or the ideas that we have about ecological restoration and what we're trying to do it as an alliance. So sometimes we try to formulate it. Other times we're happy just to feel and assume that we're all on the same page. And as individuals, I think each individual will have a variation of this vision. They'll have a fragment of the whole with varying degrees of resolution and definition that would come in and out as you move forward. But again, each vision has an overlap with the others, and that overlap is what defines our alliance, and that's what brings us to become in a space where we can work together and try and carry forward this shared vision as members of an alliance. We're not members of an organization, we're members of an alliance, so it's a free alliance that brings us together. And as we bring this alliance and this shared vision amongst ourselves, it takes us towards this idea of manifestation. And we need to translate ideas into actions and eventually into the material realm. Now, this is something that many of the people in the alliance have done at an individual level or an organizational level. There's some amazing projects out there that people have done within their own groups or on their own, and they've created restoration projects. But here we're looking more at the idea of a shared vision and how do we manifest that amongst ourselves. And I think that's one of the things that's quite interesting at the alliance level. We have our mission statements, but I think when we're working on particular projects, sometimes it's good to look at what is our vision for knowledge development. So I think what I'd like to do now is just put up a slide, which is something that I worked on for the botanical gardens. And I just wanted to share it. Maybe it sparks some ideas and maybe it gives some people some thoughts. And then to see where the germination protocols is embedded within this set. So we aim to inspire and manifest the replenishment of India's natural capital through restorative processes that create resilient, productive, and diverse landscapes. Now, this is somehow the words that I've used. And you'll see below those 5 points that we need to understand or be aware of or have knowledge or create the resources. And I think when we look at the germination protocols, that really nicely fits into 3 and definitely in 4. And so that we have a practical knowledge, we have experience, and we want to be able to create those resources to disseminate this information. And so I think that within the vision of the idea of knowledge and resources, this is where the ideas that we've put together for this germination will come together. So how did we focus on it? Where did we go? As Arjun has mentioned, we had a first meeting in Jodhpur, and that was after about a year of discussing online. And that was the first physical gathering of the members in September 2022, I believe. And there we began to explore ways to bring information together from different sources. And there we met people and we created those relationships, those friendships that come from being in a space together and walking the land, experiencing an amazing restoration project that was done there in Jodhpur. And that led to the initial collaboration, which was a series of online meetings with different people from different areas, different expertise. Some people were just there to be interested, and some people brought with them a lot of information. And that got us to the point where we had 200 species from 5 different sources. And that was our sort of that's where we got to. That's with the energy that we could muster as an organization, just on that sort of, let's get together and do something. But with that initial step, we were able then to sort of have a body of work that somebody else saw. And that happened to be the representative from DCB Bank. And they offered us the potentiality to have CSR funding. And that has been supporting us for the last 7 to 8 months, even 9 months here at the Botanical Gardens. And that's given us the ability to put resources behind the work, to further work on the data and to increase the size of the database. And that's got us up to this 474 species with over 1,000 described germination techniques. So some species will have 3 or 4. Some species will only have 1 germination technique, but now we've got that data there. We've also launched the website, which we'll see a little later on. And we've been lucky enough to be able to create a series of reels, videos, short videos, which can be seen on Instagram or on YouTube, which just basically lay out simple nursery techniques for anybody who's interested to start a native plant nursery. And we now, at the end of this process, we have a number of practical steps which we can move forward with. And so that's the next steps that we can see towards the end of this presentation. Before we go any further, I think that it's really important during presentations like this just to stop and think and wonder at the amazing thing that is nature. Nature is just such an extraordinary and beautiful place to be in and to understand and experience. And germination is an extraordinary moment in the life cycle of plants. It's something that is actually rare or perhaps absent. I'm not sure. I'd love to have that discussion as well. Is it present in the animal world at all? But is that moment, what is germination? It's this moment when it stops. So you've got this process after fertilization that the seed has been created. And then it just goes from there and it stops and it waits. And it waits for the right moment. And so this is nature actually understanding the complexity of the environment within which it finds itself. It's a seasonality that's driven by this sort of dynamic cosmic movement of the planets within the solar system, that the planet is moving around the sun, that it creates variation within the sun's intensity, it creates the climatic conditions, and all of that is a physical environment which the plant is sensing, and which at the beginning of life was sensed by the plants, and now they cannot move, they cannot adapt in that sense, they cannot move and move away from the extremes of the environment, they have to stand there and deal with it. And one of their ways to deal with it was to create this moment within their life cycle where everything just stops. They can pause this process of fertilization and gestation at a moment. And it's through trial and error of the evolutionary process that this has come around. And it's quite just a wonderful thing to see what's happened. And then as evolution has gone further, it's refined this process. And it's not only managed to pause that progression of time or its own life cycle, but it creates structures to protect the embryo, to store these energetic resources that it's gathered from the sun and store them in a space that then when activity recommences, then it can move forward again. And then it's had to protect that energy from other life forms that are ready to try and steal that energy through the hard shell of the seed or something like this. And finally, it times the moment when the process recommences to ensure that it's the best possible moment for the young plant to succeed in establishment. And that's this moment where the plant breaks its dormancy and starts to germinate. And so what we're doing by becoming involved in germination and getting involved in this whole process of being with the plants is understanding the techniques and the technologies and the things that the plant's done to help itself establish itself within this amazing space. And that's just, in a way, a simplified linear description of an amazing reality that's inherent in each species of plant. It gets more and more complex as the multiple relationships and evolutionary solutions to historical problems get layered on top of that. And it's been this journey through millennia that plants have made, which is really all inherent within this simple thing that we're talking about, which is germination techniques. And so this is what one of the things that as a collective, each plant has its own story. Each plant has this amazing narrative that it's communicating to us when we start to look at it. But if we look at it and understand it, then we can take this and communicate it to other people. And here we have then a beautiful story, an amazing story for each one of these plants as to what's happening. Why is it stopped? How did it stop? And how does it get moving again? It's just a wonderful thing. It's just an aspect of nature that I think is very important to stop and think about and enjoy the magic that's there. So back to the sort of, that was a little brief interlude for magic and wonderment. Now we're back to actually what we got on with. So as you see here on the screen, you're looking at a screenshot of the website, which we'll look at later. So this is now online with all the species up there. You can search through it, you can get the information, and you can see what's happening. So that's just one of those things that's there. And then the other thing is these series of videos that we've produced, which are shot in the vertical so that they're easy to look at on the phone. And it just gives you this nice feeling of how to do things in the nursery. So we looked at soil preparation, seed collection, seed sowing, transplanting. So the whole journey all the way through the nursery to the point where you look at nursery management. They're short reels, 1.5 minutes long. They're the experience that mainly we've had at the Oroville Botanical Gardens. But it just gives someone who's starting out the idea of how they could perhaps look at the process of starting a nursery. And it's something that we could do in the future. We can build this for different regions with different soil types and things like that. So that's another resource that's out there for everybody to look at. That'll be launched next week. But back to the practical. So what did we do when we actually started this project of looking at germination techniques? And what work has gone into this development of this database, and how does it connect with the other work that's going on with the ERA? So the first thing is cleaning the data. The data was important to clean because we had multiple sources of data, as we've mentioned. And everyone comes in with a spelling mistake or a different name for a plant. The scientific name, some people use a synonym, some people use an old name. So we've worked to clean this data. So now the data is coherent, and hopefully there's fewer and fewer mistakes. There may still be one or two, which is nice. If people see mistakes, please let us know. And with particular, we've worked with the scientific names. Now, just for reference for everybody, we've been working with the database that's hosted by Q, Plants of the World Online. It's also known as Powwow. And we've been using a script in our programming language, which was shown to us by Roland Kinnett from ISCRAT in Nairobi. And there's a program that you can then just put in your lists, and it will send back and the same list, but with on a new column, the correct scientific name. So if you've got an old synonym, it will give you a suggested new scientific name or the current scientific name. And if there's a spelling mistake, it will come back with you and say, this is actually how you should have perhaps spelt this thing. You need to double check it, but it's a very good way to clean your data. So this is now something that we can regularly do with our data. And it means that we have that coherent information. And we're also keeping track of the synonyms, so old names that other people would have used in the past. And we're also trying now to build up an extensive list of local names in the different vernacular areas. We've also linked the germination protocol list that we're doing with the other work that's being run through the ERA's Knowledge and Resource Desk. Now, this is one of the resource desks that's being funded by a grant from Rain Matter Trust. There's now 7 or 8 or 9 desks running with the ERA. And we have a knowledge and resource desk. And if you look at the small picture on the left-hand side, you'll see that map of India, which represents the ecoregions of the subcontinent. And this is a project that's running through for the next 3 years. And it's a long-term project that goes into elaborate detailing for each of the ecoregions. So at the moment, they're quite large. And within each ecoregion, there's a lot of variation depending on altitude, climate, and soil. We have forest types, we have grassland types, we have other types of ecosystems that are there. So we're now looking at how can we fine-tune that. But it gives us this large, beautiful vision that we're working towards, which is to create and supply correct information for each part of the Indian subcontinent, and what are the right species to be planting in the right space, whether they're trees, shrubs, grasses, or other types of plants. So this is the large long-term project. And for each ecoregion at the moment, we are setting out to define the most important species for each of the region, the common ones, which are the species that are everywhere, the rare and threatened species of those ecoregions, which we can find from lists online. We can also look for the charismatic species, the one that talk to people, the ones that people will readily recognize as part of their ecoregion. The umbrella species, ecological umbrellas, the ones that are super important for some of the keystone species, like some of the ficus species can be very important for large numbers of species. And finally, the species that are important for restoration. So which are the ones that if we have a degraded landscape for that particular ecoregion, which of those species are the ones that we should be developing in our nurseries and helping us to re-pioneer those lands? And so this is the sort of preliminary list that we're developing for each one of those ecoregions. A lot of work has already been done. We have a number of profiles for the ecoregions already online, and more profiles have been in the process of being edited and set up at the moment. So that's another resource that people can look at on the ERA website. We now have a list that stands at around 1,200 species, which spreads across, I think, something like 30 ecoregions. And so we're taking that and we're using that work to now guide the work forward with the germination list. So we've got our current list, and how do we now expand that list? We're hoping now that we can document and verify the germination techniques for these important species in these different ecoregions. So it focuses our work in the next phase of this project to look specifically at ecoregions and specifically at those important species that I've just defined for each one of those ecoregions. And how are we going to do that? We're going to do that through further regional collaborations. That's the sort of idea that we want to take forward and use within the ERA membership, but also to use energy to reach out to other practitioners, to other nurseries, because there's a number of other nurseries that are growing native plants that we've discovered over the last 12 months, and connect with those people, connect with nurseries that have been going for 20 years, where you even have amazing people that have just been working there, germinating seeds. So how do we gather that knowledge and build this information for each one of those ecoregions? And that's one of the challenges that we're going to be looking at in the next phase. Moving on, I think, you know, we see the collaboration. We see this, you know, and as often I've often said, it's the nursery is the engine room. The nursery is often the engine room of a restoration project. Now, not always. It's really important now to acknowledge that not all restoration requires plantation, that assisted natural regeneration, wherever it's possible, is a very important technique, which we should be talking about a lot, because it's a very efficient way. It's a very important understanding that the rootstock in the ground that often is stunted can be nurtured back to health and will give you much better results than plantation projects. And on a wider scale, it's something that's very important to look at. But on the other hand, the nursery is still important for developing species that are either not existing within that current ecosystem that needs to regenerate, or on bare patches of ground, or in situations where we're dealing with other environments. And so the nursery really is that engine room. And so our work really will be to connect as many of these nurseries around those ecoregions to enable restoration projects to source good quality seedlings, and to encourage those nurseries as well. I think that's also a very important aspect that we need to consider when we're talking about nurseries, germination. How can people themselves prosper and generate a wealth for themselves or for their projects by running those nurseries? And I think that connectivity, that coordination between the nurseries is a really important aspect that we can also develop as we move forward with this project. So we're interconnecting those nurseries. Nurseries are already available on the ERA website, but we really hope that that can expand dramatically in the next couple of years as more projects come online, and also as people become more aware of the connectivity that the Ecological Restoration Alliance is bringing. So that's collaboration, networking. How do we build this knowledge? And then I think at the end, I'm coming to the end now, in the sense that we're talking about how do we build this vision? How do we make those connections, the communication? How do we build all of those things that are there inherently within the ERA network, so that we can come down to this action of building the vision and coordinating the goodwill and the energies of those who have the passion to share and disseminate their knowledge. And I think that's sort of the stewardship role that the ERA can perform, and encourage people who are out there, who have an understanding of germination, who have an interest in regeneration and replenishment, to connect and build this knowledge base that is there for everyone to use. And with that, I come to the end of this launch, this presentation. I didn't want to talk for too long. I hope I've covered all the aspects of the project and the work that's been done. Perhaps have not paid testament to a lot of the work that's been done by a lot of people. So just to reiterate that there's been an enormous amount of collaboration and goodwill in the beginning of this project when we gathered that data. And there's been a lot of hard work by a number of the people in the various teams to gather those informations, to collate that information and build it together. And then there's been the collaboration and the guidance from the central secretariat of the ERA, which has built this website and built the database, which is now online for everyone to enjoy and use and develop and contribute to. So now I'm going to hand back to June, who will take over, and he will look at the website online. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, stop sharing, and I'm going to hand it back to, now I have to figure out how to stop sharing. Okay, I think I'll stop
That's okay.
sharing.
I've taken it over. Don't
Thanks,
worry.
Arjun. Thanks
Yeah.
so much.
So hi everyone. I think I'm just going to quickly tell you how you can find the seed germination database. So if you go onto the ERA website, I think that somebody has also dropped the right link. But if you go onto the ERA website, you can always go to seed germination, and that will open well, this database. So the entire database is, like it was mentioned, the contributions have come from many people, and they've been listed down here. We've kind of sorted this data out by the scientific name at this point, and you can always filter out for different names by the alphabets above. Or I think somebody had asked this question about how do they find how do you germinate banyan? So if I search banyan, I don't know why it's not showing up. It was just showing up. So Ficus religiosa was also there. Oh, that's why, because I selected that. Yeah, so that's people. So somebody had asked about people, and then somebody had also asked for banyan. So if the database has it, it will most likely show up in that, and you'll have different methods that has been there for listed by different people. Sometimes the method might be the same. Um, and there will also be other notes that you can look at, which is when should the seeds be collected, or how can it be planted, and so on. So apart from this, I think one more thing, some of you have also asked, how can one contribute? And I think one way to contribute is if you go onto this database here, it'll show you have your own native seed germination data to share from your ecoregion. You can click on contribute your data, and let me see if, yeah, so then it'll show you this sheet where you have how to enter this data, and then different people would have actually kind of already contributed. So this is where all this contribution has come from, and these are all listed here. So if you want to volunteer your time and actually share your data, this is one way to do it. After that, our team will also take it over from there and refine it, and then add it up into the backend based on the process that Paul had mentioned. So this is it from us at this point of time. And I think we can also open up for Q&A.
Yeah, June, there's a few questions on the Q&A.
Yep.
So you touched the first one, which was how to germinate the people tree and the banyan tree. So answer to that is definitely go on the website. The information is there. Someone has asked a philosophical question, which is great. Does it entirely focus on germination or other propagation techniques as well? We have both in the videos. We have one video about cuttings and vegetative propagation. And there is also information on the database about vegetative propagation. So it's not that we're solely focusing on germination. We're talking about propagation. And wherever people have experience of propagating through cuttings, that's information that we're very interested in. And we are putting up on the website. That was from Malika. We have a question that was, what are the conditions to register as a nursery? Does it have to be native species only, or can it be mixed? Absolutely can be mixed. I think the important thing is that we are growing plants that are native, and if we have that resource available to people to find and to use, then definitely any nursery that is growing some native species is very, very welcome to register and become part of that connectivity. So that's a very specific question, which we can easily answer. We have an anonymous attendee. So what's your idea of eco-restoration? Like, what is the process? I understand that native mixed species part, but in terms of plantation, what's your approach? And what are your thoughts on Miyawaki method for afforestation? Those are some of the questions that we have looked at in other webinars or other conversations. I think there's an extensive responses to some of those questions on the website. And I think we're very much talking about ecological restoration, where we're restoring towards a reference ecosystem. So when we're talking about any regional-based work within the ecoregion that we've defined, we're looking at finding reference ecosystems that can give you a very good idea of what is the plant complexity of that region and how do they function together. So this is the approach generally followed, but there's many variations. I will leave the question on Miyawaki afforestation because it would take a long time. But I think generally there's a lot of information that people have put up about that. And generally the way that Miyawaki is done currently in the Indian context is quite far away from what we would consider to be ecological restoration. The original form of Miyawaki from Japan was actually a very interesting way of doing things, but it's definitely changed as it's come to India. And these days, the idea to plant lots and lots of trees very close together is not really what we're promoting or looking towards. But if you're using native species, high density plantation can be a useful way to deal with harsh conditions. So there's backwards and forwards on that. Someone has asked the regenerative farmer, they're very interested in starting a better nursery. Would the ERA help me set it up for my region? Absolutely. We have a community desk where you can reach out to, and they will put you in contact with people in the local area. And you can also go on the website and see which practitioners are in your region and what nurseries are in your region. But you can definitely get support from appropriate people in the region. I've got down to, do you also involve indigenous people and local communities and use their traditional knowledge in restoration process or seed germination? Absolutely, yes, 100%. It's a very important part of a lot of projects that are running through the ERA. And that's really where, if we can get germination techniques from local traditional communities or just local people who've been working with plants all their lives, I think that's the tried and tested, 100% verified techniques that we're really interested in. So it's very important to us. Where are we now? Does germination from seed give better results or vegetative propagation where a new propagule will produce 100% of the single parent's characteristics? Genetic variability is really important in a restoration project. We do not really need to create clonal plantations. We're definitely moving into a phase of climate change and a resilient, diverse plantation, both in terms of species and the genetic makeup of within those species. So the inter and intra-specific variation is really important. We're going to get microclimate changes more rapidly than we're going to get sort of the macroclimate changes unless we have disasters. Small temperature changes, longer periods of hot winds, more days without rain, increased water stress. And so high degree of variability within the plants that you're growing within the nurseries will enable the plantation that you're putting out to adapt to those variations, and the survival will be stronger within your population. Some will die, but some will survive, and hopefully some will thrive. So we're looking at shifting parameters within the climatic changes that are coming forward. And so it's good and very interesting to collect seeds from multiple seed sources. If you can collect a few seeds from each tree, that's the best way of going about it. However, to just say that vegetative propagation is sometimes useful, particularly when seeds are very difficult to germinate and you want to try and get some genetic material in there. There are protocols for collecting vegetative materials. And again, it's really good to collect from multiple parent sources so that you're collecting a few cuttings from each of the trees that you might find. So that's also shown in the videos that you can collect from multiple sources, but it's just generally good to keep the diversity as high as possible. Right, that was a long question. Where are we now? What is the procedure to grow bonsai breed? I think that's a whole different topic. It's a beautiful thing to be involved in. It's very exciting to grow bonsais, and some people love to do it, and I know some of my friends do it. But I think that's another topic. So it's something that I have very little experience of, and perhaps it's not really something that we can talk to right now. So I'll move along from that one. Can a nursery bag be baseless to allow the roots to drain faster, avoiding waterlogging and root rocks? Good question. The most important thing is that the roots are not disturbed during the movement from the nursery to the plantation site. This is the really important moment in a plant's cycle when we're working with the restoration process, where we're planting trees and shrubs from a nursery packet. The movement, the time spent in the nursery is like where everyone's looked after and there's no problems. And then that moment where they're picked up and they're moved, and then they're put on a lorry or a truck or a bullock cart, and they're taken out to the plantation, and then they're stocked on site, and then they're planted. And then there's maybe some days where they're left alone and they're not cared for. And then the actual moment where they're transferred from the bag into the pit. All of these are really, really important moments in that plant's life. Now, the least root damage that you can do, the better. If you have bottomless bags, you may be able to, but then you would definitely have to grow them on a very strong cement or hard stone surface. Otherwise, they're going to root into the ground, and when you try and pick those seedlings up, you're going to get extensive root damage. So it's something to experiment with. It's not something to say no to, but it's something to be very clear about what you're trying to do in the nursery. You're looking after a plant during those critical first 2 years or 1 year, from germination to the point where you can put them into the ground. And that last moment from the end of the nursery to the point when you get to your planting site is really, really important. And so that is where you want to focus your attention to ensure that you have as much perfection as possible. Under germination percentage, it says high, medium, and low. What does each percentage denote? High means around 80, 90%, I would say. Medium is sort of 40 to 60%, and low can be as low as 3 seeds out of 1,000. So it goes really far down. Rather than sort of, we haven't expected people, and we ourselves don't do, we don't plant 100 seeds and then count how many seeds have germinated, but it's a rule of thumb. And that rule of thumb can really guide you in the process when you're collecting seeds, how many you would need to collect. It also guides you when you're deciding how to plant them in your nursery, whether you're going to put them in seed beds or seed trays. If seeds are rare, if you don't have many of them, or you know that you may not get a lot of germination, then sometimes it's good to plant them in a seed tray so you can take extra care of them. But then if you collect thousands and thousands of seeds because you know germination potential is very low, for example, that's our case with Terminalia paniculata, then we can plant as many seeds as we can in a seed bed and just leave it and see if something comes up. So it can help you. It's really just there as a guide to help you when you're starting out to know how many seeds you should collect and how long you should be waiting. So we've also tried to tell you, excuse me, how long you need to wait for those seeds to germinate, because some seeds can take up to a year or even more. And in the past, it took us a long time to realize that seeds took a year to germinate because we gave up in frustration. Yes, someone's asking, Sanjeev's asking if we have a nursery. We don't sell seedlings, but can we register and share your data? Yes, absolutely, 100%. Fantastic, amazing. Please, please, please do. That's really, really nice. In the data, we often notice differences in genetic techniques, germination techniques across different ecoregions. Yes, that's fascinating, isn't it? And like I can tell stories of people that find it very easy to germinate a species as they move further north. And again, back to Terminalia paniculata, we can't germinate it because I don't think the seed is actually valid. It's not been fertilized or it hasn't formed properly. There's seeds that I have trees that grow in Oroville that the 100 kilometers inland will produce fertile seeds, and they don't produce fertile seeds here in Oroville. So I think seed viability is one thing that shows great variation across the range of species. And I can expect that species, trees, plants are very able. They're very able to put resources where they feel they need resources. We know that trees, if they grow in a windless space, they don't put lignin down and they don't sort of form a strong trunk. That's why in a greenhouse, you need to go and shake the trees. Otherwise, they become floppy. And I think trees will, or plants or grasses will have the ability to understand their environment and therefore create different types of dormancy, maybe, or different types of recalcitrance within their seeds so that we have different germination techniques. And that's one way of it coming. And it can just also be that people have tried different things and had success. So different ways also lead to the same place, So I think it's fine that we have those. Just try. When you're germinating seed, try what works best for you and try different variations. I mean, if that's something, if there's two different types of technique and you have lots of seed, then try both techniques and see which one works for you. Can we build a tool where if one enters their location, native trees of that area can be shown on a list? Yes, that's absolutely what we're trying to do with the ecoregions. So at the moment, as you look at an ecoregion where you are, then you will be able to find what is the ecoregion of that area, and you'll be able to download a PDF of the information about that area. As we move forward with our knowledge and resource desk, we hope that the resolution increases so that as you go to a finer and finer resolution for your town or something like some particular region, you can get a more precise species list. And that's something that we're definitely working on, that we're very excited to work on, and that we need inputs from as many people as possible from around the country. So if anybody has species lists from different regions, please, please, please think about sharing them with us so that we can build that into that sort of knowledge, that knowledge tool. Then there's a long question, so thank you. In agro, we found that cuttings can provide volumes that, yes, 100%. Yes, cuttings can produce things very fast, and you can scale up very quickly with cuttings. You definitely can do very well with restoration, particularly in agroecology. I agree. We do have that information on the website. Perhaps we need to spend more time explaining the pros and cons of vegetative cuttings, and I think I'll take that on board as a thing to look at, and maybe we can produce some sort of documentation on the pros and cons and look for other research that people have done, because I think it is very important to understand where things can help and the limitations of those things that speed up the process in terms of genetic variability. We get down to the next question, which is, where are germination protocols for threatened or vulnerable plant species available in this database? Yes. Do individuals need special permits to cultivate these species? You need special permits to collect those seeds if they are found in reserve forests. So permits do need to be taken if you're going into reserve forests from the forest department. So it really depends on your seed source. There's the biodiversity committees that are centered around the country where you can check for information about those things. But yes, it's something that it would be important to check when you're collecting seeds if you have the correct permissions in place. Woo, we go to the next one. Won't grasses be useful when restoring places like Dunedin Hills? Yes, absolutely, 100%. Grasses are amazing. And we have a number of people in the ERA who are very knowledgeable about grasses, and in the germination protocol website, in the database, you will find information about germination of grasses, and we are hoping to build that stronger and stronger as we go along. So yes, absolutely. Then, can you explain sizes of poly bags to be used at the height of saplings in the nursery for better growth root? 1 litre packets are generally good. They're generally useful for growing seedlings at a certain size. Particularly, seedlings will be in the nursery perhaps for 6 months or perhaps for 1.5 years. So quality of seed bag is also really important, that they don't degrade too quickly in the nursery. 1 litre packet, you can get a nice seedling often of about 3 to 4 feet, which is often, if you're not holding seedlings in the nursery for too long, that's what you can aim for. 5 litre packets are good to grow seedlings on for 3, 4, 5 years. Then you'll get seedlings to a height of perhaps 4, maybe to 5 feet, depending on the species. It's really about knowing the species and understanding how long they need to be in the nursery, and how big do they need to be when you're planting them out into your different restoration sites, and what sort of competition they're going to face and what sort of extreme environment they're going to face. So that really depends on what size you want to grow the plants to. Faisal's here. Faisal. Paul, tell us a story about germination that left you with awe and wonder. Oh, what a nice question, Faisal. I think that one of the lovely stories of my life has been with Vitex altissima, which is for many of you would know Notchil, which is Vitex nigundo. Vitex altissima is a beautiful tree, which has these lovely small white zygomorphic flowers. It's mentioned in Sangam literature. I forgot the poem, but it's something about a poet who's talking to a lady on a balcony. And it's a tree that we would collect lots and lots and lots and lots of seeds of, and it wouldn't germinate. And in our area, it grows, but we could never get seeds that were viable, and we still can't. But then I went on a trip down to Puttakotai, which is in the south, and there's a number of sacred groves in Puttakotai, and I found a Vitex altissima tree down there. And it had slightly larger, fleshier seeds, and I brought it back with a little hope. And when we planted those seeds, I didn't get many, I got 20, but I got these most beautiful seedlings that just grew straight out of the packet and grew very, very fast, up to about a height of 3 feet. And before that, we'd been trying with cuttings and everything else, and the cuttings would come and then they'd get stunted and it wouldn't work. But when we got the seed and we got the good fertile seed, it was just such a joy. And I can still remember looking at those beautiful seedlings in the nursery. It's a beautiful plant because it has a winged petiole. And in Tamil, it's called Mailadi Maram, meaning peacock foot tree. And so the seedlings in the nursery were just gorgeous and absolutely amazing. So that's my little quick one, without too much rehearsal. Someone's talking about Miyawaki. Yes, I agree with you. Someone is mentioning that Miyawaki is not really sensible with respect to ecological restoration, and people who are new to the space sometimes don't know the nuances. Therefore, thumb rule can be mentioned on the platform, which helps various stakeholders get a high level of the understanding of the space. I think there's a couple of articles that are posted on the ERA website that have been written, which go into quite interesting details about the Miyawaki and what are the challenges when using the term Miyawaki. So I think it would be good that if people are new to spaces, that they understand, and if they're thinking about Miyawaki or someone's proposing, often clients will come and propose Miyawaki. It's really good to sort of do some research and understand where the idea came from and what is your reference ecosystem, because that's what you're really trying to recreate in ecological restoration. Does the database specify the tentative soil condition in which the germination has taken place? We talk about a germination media, which types of soil is good for the germination, which is often different from the types of soil that you would grow plants in. It often has less compost because you don't want seeds to rot. So we do talk about that. And as we move forward with the ecological, the ecoregions, we are definitely talking about soils where plants are found, which plants are found in which types of soil. So that's very much part of the ecoregion work. Have we had any success with eco-friendly non-plastic bags? No, we haven't had much success. We've tried different things over the past, but when it comes down to large scale, if you're working at a small scale, then you can definitely recycle all sorts of bags, whether they're pet food bags, whether they're yogurt pots, whether they're clay pots. On a small scale, those work. When you're working at a large scale, unfortunately, at present, the plastic bag is very useful. It's very uniform, and it creates a product which is easy to transport, easy to move around. Now, the other day, I saw a wonderful article about plastic bags that dissolve in salt water. So maybe, hopefully, we can move forward in the not too distant future and have a plastic bag that does dissolve and disappear without trace. It was a very exciting article, but we don't have an alternative as yet. Now I move down to, do you have a database of nursery for undergrowth, tubers and grasses? Yes, they're included in the database. No, we don't have a lot of them, but we're definitely interested in them. We're definitely interested in them for the database, and we're definitely interested in them for our ecoregion work. So that sort of work, but often plants with tubers will come from seeds. So let's take the example of Gloriosa superbora, which I think the germination techniques are in the database. And they create a tuber. So I think a lot of plants that come from tubers will come from seeds. Grasses, as I've already mentioned, we do have grasses, and we would like to know more about grasses as well. So if anyone has information, please do share that. Have you laid down a protocol on how to harvest or collect healthy seeds? We have shown that in one of the videos. We haven't laid out an explicit way to harvest or collect healthy seeds, but I think that's something that we can take on board and that we should work on as a guidance document, and that's something that we can do in the near future. So thank you very much for asking that question. But it is mentioned in the videos if you look at the video for seed collection, which will be available next week. What method are you using, like counting each seed and then calculation germination rate or other? No, we're not doing that. You can do that, and that's wonderful information to have. And sometimes when we do projects at the gardens with students or something, that we do that sort of germination technique. But I think the information we're really putting on the website is practical information, and the guidance that we're giving there is practical information. So if you know that the plant has low germination, you know you should plant lots of seeds. If you know it has high germination, then you can be really picky and choosy where you collect seeds from. It's just to give you that sort of information as you move forward. Have laws changed with regard to selling forest species seeds? So I was able to get them, but now they don't sell them as the data was where it collected. Okay, I haven't heard that one. That's an interesting point. It's something that we would need to be aware of and check with, like I say, the biodiversity committees. But thank you for raising that. And I think we can also check out and see if we can do that. Do you think seed germination activities in a nursery for different plants should follow its natural germination month season? Is it suggested to collect germination in off seasons in a controlled environment? Good question. But I think what we're trying to do, if we look at it from the point of view of the nursery, we are breaking the dormancy of the seed early in some cases, so that we can run them through the nursery and have them ready to plant out at the beginning of the wet season. Now, if you take, for example, a seed that has an inherent dormancy that's based on the dry season, it's going to sit on the ground and go through the dry season. And then when the rains come, it's going to swell and it's going to germinate, and then it's going to try to establish. It's going to face all sorts of challenges during that time, whether it's predation by insects, by borers, and then when it starts to germinate, it's going to be there in the natural conditions. What we do is that if the seed is ready in January and the rains are not there until May, we can actually break the dormancy of the seed early, grow it in the nursery for 5 months, and have a reasonable sized seedling, for example, with Acacia leucoflower or Acacia chundra. Many other plants, I'm just using those as two good examples that immediately came into my mind. But we can have those ready to plant in May, June when the rains come. So that's what we're doing in the nursery. We're manipulating the natural parameters of the plants to somehow help us, enable us to build that into our program of restoration. Now, some seeds are not possible to store. They're called recalcitrant seeds. So those seeds will fall at the beginning of the rainy season or just before the rainy season. So we take examples like Diospyros ferrea, Diospyros ebanum, and that. And those seeds that are then falling at the beginning of the monsoon, we're taking into the nursery, and those are the seedlings that we'll actually probably carry through the nursery for the next 12 months and plant in the following rainy season. So there's different types of seed, have different ways of approaching through the nursery. Vinod's asking which season is considered for germination of seeds. I've just answered that. What's the maturity period for teak and sandalwood? I don't off the top of my head know that, but I could say within 10, 15 years for teak, and probably a little longer for sandalwood, but it depends on the conditions that those trees are growing in, and depends on the stress of the plants and where they're at. And we get to the last one, which is from Soham. Hi, Soham. Hey, Paul, is there a particular ecoregion in India which has big data gaps in terms of horticultural methods or seed germination, and why do you think that is? There's definitely gaps in the database. Up in the Himalayas, we have less information. It's just that I think as we're building this network, you've got to remember that the ERA is quite nascent, and we're trying to bring in more members from different places. And the work that we're doing here with the ecoregions is to try and then reach out to those other places and make those connections and build that knowledge. So it's an ongoing process, but yes, there's definitely areas where we need more people to connect and help us build that information. And finally, we got an extra just before 5 o'clock. Do you practice any seed priming treatment before actually going for germination? Yes, some of the most often these, again, look at the videos. But we're looking at, often we soak the seeds. Sometimes we scratch the seeds to take off the shiny coat so that water can enter into the inner area of the seed. So there's quite a few different techniques that are described in the videos, and that again, hopefully we'll come up with a little manual where we go through some of those techniques and show that so that people can download a PDF, but that's something in the pipelines as well. So that's it. End of questions. I give it back to Arjun to take over if he wants to. Is he around? He's over my shoulder. He's coming in. He's just going to jump on. He's just co-pilot at the end of the sequence.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I think my laptop is hanging, so I'm just going to now bump and stand next to Paul. But thank you all so much for coming and joining for this webinar. It was really nice to have you all here. And thank you for all the fantastic questions that you shared. The seed germination database is always available on the ERA website. And as always, you're always welcome to contribute. Anyone and everyone is welcome to contribute to the database, as well as be a member of the Alliance. So thank you so much for joining in, and thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Arjun.
Yeah. There you go. All right.
Cheerio.